All right. What do you say we get this thing going? Rob.
Uh,
Hello. Hey, man. You hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
So you were in a daze there for a moment, buddy.
I thought you could hear me, but no. Yeah, let's get this rolling. Okay, so book five,
Book
Fires of Heaven.
5.
Uh I think we're in agreement. This is when things kick off. I think for me, this is when things really start to get rolling.
Well, there's
Um,
there's a there's a tremendous shift in this book in the way the story is going.
mhm.
And so, a lot of people that I've talked to that have started reading this series have there's quite a few that have gotten to book 5 and then stopped. Um, and if you're one of those folks, then hey, keep going, keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
Book 5 does the story changes a lot because in this book the characters go from being the small town village people
Yeah.
to coming more into who they become in the story. So that
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
the innocence is gone at this point. So
I think the innocence has been gone for quite a while, especially for the character of Rand. Like that man has been through a lot. And that's the thing. Like the last five books have taken place over, I want to say, what, two maybe 3 years, I think,
yeah, somewhere in there, yeah.
roughly. Yeah. So he went from someone who was like 17, 18. 'Cause I think about that time, that was that was about the time, the beginning of the book. They were like 17 or 18. They had just kind of come into their manhood. Um, and yeah, and now he's basically public enemy number one for pretty much everybody.
Um,
I mean, he's a savior for some, but for the most part, he's a tool that everybody wants to use
right.
for various purposes. So everybody's trying to get their hands on him, and that's just him. Not that's not talking about everybody else, like Egwene and Navi, and Nynaeve and Matt. Well, the primary focus is on Matt, Rand, and Perrin, Matt, and Rand, to be specific. They're the central focus. Nynaeve and Egwene and like Moraine, all those they're supporting cast to those three. To be honest, um,
Mm.
they're important. They're important, especially the women, especially like Egwene and Nynaeve. They're important, but without those three, without Matt, Perrin, and Rand, everything's done.
The unique thing about these books is that it really who is the main characters changes from book to book.
Mm,
And you do have that overlying story. So you have the three Tabarine, you have Matt, Pern, Rand. Um, but each one of these books kind of focuses on some different. Yeah, it focuses on some different characters. Um, like this book, the primary character in the book is Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn, who's
uh,
and the end of book 4 is really he now knows that he's, or at least believes that he's the Dragon Reborn, and that he's potentially the Karakarn, which is what the Aiel call the Dragon Reborn.
mm,
But Rand al'Thor shares a good chunk of this story in this book with another character, and that character is Nynaeve Almera. Those two
yeah,
characters are the majority of the content in this book.
yeah.
Surprisingly enough, like Pern isn't in this book at all. He's mentioned.
He's out there. He's busy.
He is. He just got married. Saved the two rivers, got married to Fail, and gets to have a little honeymoon or something. It's all good. But yeah, he's not in this book at
Mm.
all. Metrim Cathan is really only in a few chapters. And outside of that, the focus is really on now Nynaeve and Rand. Those are the two characters you spend the most time with in this book. And the story piece to it is incredible. So you know what, you want me to start off with where they're, because we're coming.
Yeah. Let's give the audience a bit of a lead into to kind of where we're at.
Well, at the end of book four, we had a little showdown with we had a little showdown with Kaladin, the quote unquote clan chief of the Shaido Aiel.
Yeah, the asshole.
And they immediately consolidated their strength and set off.
Yep.
And they set off to basically ravage the land and kill the tree killers and all those things. So now Rand is stuck trying to consolidate his forces, which are kind of loosely his forces. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not clear at this point whether the Aiel are actually going to follow him as a Dragon Reborn or not.
Or not, especially
Right?
because of what happened at the end of the last book. And I'll actually touch on that real quick before you continue.
Go for it.
Basically, at the end of the last book, Rand, first of all, towards the end of the last book, and to prove himself as the Karn of Karns, um, Rand had to go to Ryodan, which is basically the uh, a sacred city to the Aiel. I mean, it actually holds the Tree of Life in it too, in its courtyard. It's the
The
only living
Vindusor.
thing in that city. Yep. Which holds a number of significance in and of itself. But anyway, so Rand goes through I think they what is Tangriel,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the world, yeah, to the world of dreams, and is shown where the Aiel originally come from and who they used to be, because they weren't always these, spear wielding, honor bound, basically Fremen. I'm never gonna get Robert Jordan. If you listen, I ain't never gonna let you live that down. I understand why, and I respect it. You did a good job, but they just Fremen, my man. Anyway, um, but the Aiel weren't always what they were. They were actually what was it? The Way of the Leaf, the
Yep.
people of the Leaf.
Yep. Way of the Leaf. They
Yeah,
followed the Way of the
Way
Leaf.
of the Leaf. Yeah, they followed the Way of the Leaf, which is essentially pacifism, like ultimate and it almost what's the group of people? It's not the Tinkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it the Tinkers?
Yeah. The
Okay,
Aethon Marie, the Tinkers.
yeah. So basically they're essentially what the Tinkers, or they were the original Tinkers essentially, which was complete and total pacifism to the point that they'd let people kill them. But somewhere along the line, they broke that oath and they took up weapons to protect themselves. So which is a really big piece because the Aiel are, their culture is built around a number of core pillars. One of them, and I think chiefly among them, is keeping of your word. Like
Jayato.
if an Aiel gives, yeah, if the Aiel gives you their word, that's that ironclad. Like they're gonna come through, even if it fucking kills them. So the fact that that's part of theirs, they broke not only were they a people that's completely counter to what they are now, but they became what they are now by breaking their word. Is that's a lot for anyone to swallow. When literally your entire identity is built on a lie. So after Rand learns this, he comes out and they have this kind of town hall of not every clan in the Airways, but most. I'd say probably the majority, maybe like 60%, managed to show up and hear this revelation. And then what happens is half of them are like, "Nah, fuck you, you're lying," and go with Kaladin and the Shaido, and the other half decide to stay. And the only reason, I think, the only reason why Rand gets the people that he does is because when he reveals that after Kaladin spouts his bullshit, because Kaladin never actually went to Ride and actually saw the truth, the rest of the clan chiefs who know the truth and the wise woman who know the truth are like, yeah, he right. That's exactly what happened. um, so that ends up breaking up the Aiel roughly in half. Well, I would say actually most probably go with Cooladin. At least from kind of what I'm remembering, and it felt like a lot of people were like, "No, we're gonna stick to what we know." But again, I could be, maybe I read it wrong,
Well,
but I feel like,
that's not really made clear in the books. I mean,
yeah,
it's up to your perception. I mean, how do you see the
yeah.
story?
Well, for me, it kind of felt, reading through those passages, felt like people were more inclined to believe Quilladin than they were Rand, despite the fact that the wise woman and the clan chiefs confirmed what he said and called out Quilladin. It's basically they wanted to put the blinders on. They didn't want to believe. They didn't want to change the status quo, so to speak. And I think you definitely see that coming into book 5, because as we were talking about off screen, you had a lot of the Aiel who would suffer, yeah, exactly, Infinico, human nature. I'm gonna take the path of least resistance, and least resistance for them would be, he's wrong. We're the Aiel. We know what we're about. We're gonna go. We're gonna continue on with what we know to be, safe and true and right in our culture. But what also ends up happening with this revelation is called the bleakness, and basically those Aiel who really can't they can't stomach it. They're like, hold on, like they can't, they basically can't process, and they end up significant. I don't want to say significant, man, that's a reach, but a number of them definitely throw basically what they call throwing down their spears and just walk away. Either walk into further into the ale waste, or wherever it is they go, but they're gone. They just kind of walk off. So yeah, that's a big deal, big fucking deal.
I,
Especially considering Aiel is supposed to help Rand with the last battle.
well, and with that thought, I've got a little different take on part of that.
Okay, yeah,
And that's the history piece that's revealed
yeah.
to the ale. Because the okay, so the ale in the time of legends were servants of the Aes Sedai. Okay, so but they were
They say that in the
yes, yes,
in the flashback.
they
Okay, I must have not remembered that then,
they
because
were
that.
they were the
Okay,
faithful servants of the Aes Sedai. So they basically, the Aes Sedai they didn't have necessarily like armies and things like that, because they
that's
had
true.
they had
Yeah,
the one power. They
the
had
one
the Aes
power.
Sedai.
Yeah, they didn't need armies.
Right, the Aes Sedai took care, protected the world, and the Ale were their servants. Um, so the Ale, if you think about, from my perspective, you think about the where the Ale are now in the story compared to the Age of Legends version. It seems to me like the Ale actually split in half. Okay,
Yeah, I
where
could see.
right, where you had these people that were they decided, as they went through the time of troubles, and they realized that no one's there to protect them. We've got to, and part of that story is told in here, where that one finally decides to stand up for himself, and picks up a weapon and strikes down someone.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the divide. That's the split right there.
Yeah,
And then
that's when people are like, kind of go either to the Tinker side, or they follow, go into, becoming what the IL are known
right,
as now.
right.
Which I don't blame this guy. Shit, someone tried to kill me, I'm gonna try to kill him right back. God damn it, shit.
Well, what are your beliefs? That's the thing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it
exactly.
kind of brought
Well,
that
it's
whole
definitely a question of beliefs.
and it brought that whole thing into question for them as a people. And they, they divided. And the ones who wanted to fight back and you got to kind of also look at the moral dilemma, because they've lived their whole lives and probably for generations as the servants of the Aes Sedai.
Mm.
And it was taboo to pick up a weapon. That's why and some of those taboos carried over into Jaito, like the aversion to swords. You know what I mean? So rather than swords, they chose spears. In a just a belt knife, basically. Um, and they lived a very hard life, and part of that's most of the Aiel at this point look at their time in the waste as basically their punishment for some failing that they failed the Aes Sedai. At this point, they still that illusion hasn't been completely broken for them, so they believe that they failed the Aes Sedai in the past. They don't really know what they did or anything
How
like
they did
that.
something wrong. Yeah.
Right, right. And so the people that kept the pacifist side are the ones that built Riotin. And the ones that didn't keep the pacifist side are the nomadic people that kind of retreated into the waste and lived out their lives, and they built a warrior society, more or less. Um, but the commonality between them was that the warrior society knew that they were the people of the dragon. That was part of their prophecy, the Karakarn and the people of the dragon. The ones that kept to the pacifist side, the Way of the Leaf, had their own beliefs. It's never really made quite clear what the song is, but that's the Way of the Leaf. Is that they wander the land looking for the lost song. And I,
Yeah, that's a good question as to what that is. Um,
So
Go continue,
I
continue.
was just gonna say, if we jump back into the story piece for book 5.
Yep.
So
Yep.
okay, so the Shaido they're headed for the spine of the world. They cross over the
Mhm.
spine of the world. Which, spine of the world is like a huge jagged mountain range that divides the waste from the wetlands. The wetlands are where the bulk of the world is. And then the waste is just this huge expanse of nothing, basically like the Sahara Desert, hard, harsh environment. So they cross over the spine of the world into Cairhien, and with Rand and his group trailing after them, hot pursuit, trying to catch them. Um,
Oh yeah.
along the way, they get to see some of the things the Shaido have done, like the border towns that basically protect the passage between the Aiel Waste and Cairhien's completely burnt to the ground, destroyed. All the people have been either taken as Geishan, which are basically slaves.
Yeah.
It's a
Basically,
little
it's like indentured servitude, not necessarily slavery, because they're not held indefinitely. I think it's the time frame is a year and a day.
for the Aiel. It's a year in the day.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Um,
so it's a different time frame for these guys.
well,
Sucks not to be an ale.
well, because it's honor based. It's
True.
part of their culture. It's honor based. So if you are taken as Geishan, it's a way to protect your honor. So if you get struck by an enemy combatant, you can claim your right to become Geishan, and you serve that other combatant for a year and a day, as basically a slave, indentured servitude. But these wetlanders, they don't follow Janto. So, and the Aiel have never taken wetlanders
Yeah,
because
that's a
the Gishan are
big
not
deal, actually.
right. They're not slaves. That's the thing. They're not property. They're just
Yeah.
serving. They're serving out their penance to protect their honor. Um, And in that case, that's how they restore their honor, is through service. So they serve for a year and a day, doing whatever, cooking the food, doing the
which kind of
laundry.
harkens back to the original piece of the Aiel, which were servants.
Right.
So it's interesting that when you start to connect the dots and you connect the pieces, it's interesting to see how, like you were saying, some of those customs have survived, changed, altered to fit, the current time frame and
Right.
the current, outlooks. But they trace their origins back to this point when they were, servants of the Aes Sedai.
So anyway, so Rand and his now army follow the army that's with the Chateau into Cairhien. Um, once they get into Cairhien, they realize that the Shaido have actually laid siege to the capital of Cairhien, and are basically trying to 20 years ago in the Aiel War. This is what they invaded Cairhien and basically burnt down this city, all to try to get this king who had dishonored them basically.
Yeah. And to those who, because I believe we went over this in the last book, but why the Aiel invaded initially was, yeah, the king of Cairhien had kind of fucked up. He went out into uh the Ale Waste, and
No,
I believe he
no,
took a,
no.
was it?
He
Okay, I
was.
thought he did.
So the Carhenian for a long time were allowed. They were the only people that were
Yeah,
allowed to traverse the waste. You learn this
yeah,
in the stories from Raoden, because the Carhenian people, it was Carhenian people that actually helped
yeah.
the ale,
Get
when
to where,
no right, and when no one else would.
yeah, they gave
Um,
him, gave him shelter and food and all that stuff, and kind of assisted them into, I guess, coming into to what would be known as the Ale Waste back
right.
then.
In honor of that, the ale gave the king of Cairhien
That's
a
right. Yeah.
sapling from the tree of life,
Uh,
and that was planted in Cairhien. Yeah, go ahead, man.
and then this king whose name I can't remember thought, you know what? This is a tree that was given to us by the Ale in honor of our helping them. It's a sign of our mutual respect and trust. You know what I'm gonna do? This is gonna make a good throw. I'm gonna turn this into a fucking chair, and he cuts it down, and he turns it into a throne. Um, and apparently the Ale took that shit way very very personally. To the point that they were like, "Oh, okay, so you're gonna take what's a symbol of our mutual trust and respect, and you're gonna turn it into a throne." Okay, so they basically march their happy asses across the spine of the world, invade the wetlands, and essentially break into Carrion to kill this one dude. And
Hmm.
then once they do that, they leave. They do nothing else. They break in, kill him, and then like, okay, job done, time to go home.
Well, and along the way, they fight massive armies
Yeah,
from every
and
nation
they
in the
beat the shit out of
world.
all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Like it basically, I don't think it goes into like explicit detail, but I get the feeling that they just steamrolled their way into Carrion, and that was like no one was stopping them, and there
right.
was going to be no one's going to stop them. Which is ironic because these are nomadic people who live in. I mean, they're essentially steppe nomads, desert nomads, really, but nomads that just steamroll, over what you might consider to be more technologically advanced and equipped enemy,
Mhm.
kill one dude, and then just go home like nothing happened.
Well, think about it from. I mean, there's a historical example there, and that's the Mongolians.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say, yeah, that's essentially kind of what they represent. The Mongolians.
right.
Yeah, I mean, these are nomadic people who rode on horseback, but Genghis Khan conquered pretty much all of the ancient world.
All the way into Europe, absolutely.
Yep,
But yeah, so
he was one of the few people to do that. It was him. I know he conquered the ancient world, and I think the only other person to come close to him was Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple other people, but yeah,
Well,
those are the two that are kind of at the top of the heap there.
yeah. If you look at it from that standpoint, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Roman Empire was fairly large in its own right.
But it
Um,
wasn't one person.
right.
It was a series of people
Right.
who kind of built on it. Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan did that like in their
Hey,
lifetime.
man, the sun at one point in time, the sun never set on the British Empire. So I mean, you know.
That's true. That's very true, actually. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so the Aiel again. That's kind of the history there between people of Karen and the Aiel. They someone decided to make a chair out of a piece of wood, and the nomads didn't like that.
That was the wrong piece of wood.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the right piece of wood to use. Not only that, but like I'm trying to sit here and just think like, why would you cut down that tree? That's so because I'm pretty sure it was probably planted in a place of honor. People we talked about it, and at this point, for it to grow large enough for someone to be able to make a chair, like a throne out of it, probably had to be massive. It was probably a good looking tree. Why the fuck were you gonna cut down that tree? There's a bunch of trees over there.
Well, you at this point, I would say the nobility of these lands are really painted into an arrogance and ignorance
Yeah. Oh yeah.
picture. Um,
Absolutely.
you look at the cultures that like the Terrans, the Terran High Lords, and how they feel that they are. You know what I mean? It's just the
They stand
Terran.
a cut above everybody else.
Right, and their society is literally those who have, and then everybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
um, but I think Cairhien is not far off from that either at this
A
point.
lot of them aren't actually. And I know that when we're looking at a lot of these political structures and societal structures in a lot of different places that we've visited thus far in Tolkien, not Tolkien, God rest his soul, and Jordan's world,
Right.
it definitely is the haves and have-nots. Like, and the
Hmm.
haves, they whether it's nurture or anything else, they look down their nose at everybody else.
Right.
Um, and I don't know, did we? And I know this is a bit of a tangent, but did we? I think we might have gone over it last week or last review. But there's a for those who haven't picked up on it, there's obviously there are ages, as the book says, there are ages to the wheel of time.
Hmm.
In the age of legends, was a time of great prosperity and advancement. If you haven't picked up on it yet, this is our history. Well, this is part of at least Jordan's version of our future, and part of our history as humanity. Because if you haven't connected the dots yet, the Age of Legends is our future, like way, way in the future.
Maybe it's our past.
Maybe it is our yo. Maybe he has pulled a
Maybe
Battlestar
Atlantis is
Galactica.
real.
Ah, yeah. Greg just blew my mind with a piece of trivia from Battlestar Galactica that I didn't know. Uh, but I'm gonna have to go back and look at it just to make sure.
You have to rethink that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like when you dropped that bomb, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. But they were flying in space, and wait, what?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is okay, we're getting way off track here, but if you think about it from this standpoint, anything that represents advancement, okay, from where we are right now. So we look at the advances of technology and those things, and we obviously are logically we start thinking, well, that's the future because things are going to continue to get better and so then there's this contrarian view of what if this just repeats itself? What if we've been there already?
Hmm.
And this is actually a time of strife. And yes, we'll get back to better days, but are they really better days?
Yeah.
Is all of this advancement and all these things is it really leading us in the right direction? Do we
Who knows?
that's right. I don't I don't
Mhm.
necessarily share those points of views, but I mean, it's
And it's ironic that you bring that up because as I'm sitting here thinking about it, and again, I know we're going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's an interesting story piece, and I think it we definitely deserves to be touched on because you see that piece where the advancement of technology and science and things leads us to a critical mass point. You know, you see it in a lot of you see it in a lot of different stories, different worlds that folks have built. I mean, go to Terry Brooks, who built the Sword of Shannara. Like, if you look at that whole story again, it's also the same thing as the little tidbit that you told me about um, Battlestar Galactica, where the past of the people in that book is humanity, is us. That's their past. The setting of the sort of the Shannara Chronicles is what it's called, is humanity's distant future after a time of upheaval because of technology and magic, at least what they consider magic. But then you look at Warhammer, the Warhammer 40k universe. You have humanity's past, and then we get to a time of the golden, as in that universe they call it the golden age of technology, where AI was rampant and everything was Gucci. People had flying cars and lived forever because there was no disease. Like, everything was top of the world. You had technology that could destroy a sun with a blink, all that, and then everything got upended, and then you have the Warhammer 40k universe, and now you have you know the Wheel of Time, which it could be our past, it could be our future, it could be a repeat. Probably is a repeat. It's like,
the most human and saddest part of that is that when we think of technology, it always leads in some way or fashion to our capacity to destroy things. So anyway,
honestly, that is very, very depressing when you think about it, because and obviously these are fictional stories, but you when at least in my mind, when I allow myself to kind of really dive deep into the deeper side of these stories and kind of the touch on the humanistic points that they're making, and all that, you stop to think, like, and realize, like what you said, is like, well, we're the individuals in this book who are depicted as humans, maybe not earth humans, but they're human. They got to this point. This bad thing happened because there was too far of a exploitation of technology, and initially started out for the betterment of humanity, but inevitably always deteriorates into, how can I kill this other person quicker?
yeah,
Like, well, how big can I make this bomb, or so, or something similar? And it does kind of, when you allow it to kind of
gestate a
sink
little
in.
bit.
It's like, ugh. Yeah, it's like, oh damn.
And in Infinity Core, you're absolutely right, man. And
Oh,
I'm a firm believer that history does repeat itself,
repeat
and
itself. Oh yeah.
it
Mhm.
seems to repeat itself in spite of what we think or what
What
we
we
try to
know.
do. Right.
Yeah, because we like you said, Infinity Core, as despite the fact that we study it, we have hundreds, if not tens of thousands of people who have made it their livelihood to look back on our human history, to learn from it, to extrapolate lessons, and they've found evidence that we can literally point to and be like, look, we've done this shit before. Well, guess what? We're gonna do it again, because this time it'll be different.
This time,
uh,
this
this
time
time
I'll
it'll be
get it
different,
right.
damn it. Yeah, this time I'll get it fucking right.
That's
And
the saddest part about it is when you're building a bomb and you don't expect an explosion. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's like, really?
it's
Come on,
not going to
man.
explode this time. What? But it's a bomb. I mean,
That's what they do. Yeah. No.
But it'll work this time. It's not going to do it. It's going to be good. Okay, sure. All right.
It's wild. But yeah, like it is an interesting rabbit hole to kind of fall down with a lot of these sci-fi fantasy stories, because you do find very similar elements in each of them at certain points and in different ways, but they all kind of sit in the same wheelhouse, and it makes you wonder. It's like, well, when if and when humanity as we know it, in the real world, gets to that point, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna react? And I mean, not to get,
Well,
we're getting there in some ways.
I'm going to tell you about how Rand al'Thor reacted. Um, because the destruction piece is exactly what happens next in the story. So
Yep.
the Aiel, almost, and they basically kill and destroy everything around the capital city, Cairhien. And when Rand and his army show up, I mean, they basically have a large force that is around the city, and then they have another large force, the Shaido, who are kind of off in a distance. So they have these two large forces to contend with, and they have to figure out what to do. How do we deal with this? And there's some interesting characters that get met in this area of the story. One of them is, oh man, what is his name? It's the guy that Rand gets to start the university. The guy that makes the lenses for the telescopes.
Yes, I am trying to remember his name. Hold on, let me. That's what we have Wikipedia for, because I know what
Well,
you're talking about.
we can come back to that piece. So you there's a massive battle, and essentially Rand enlists the aid of all the channelers that he has with him. So the wise ones. He also has, well, he doesn't have Nynaeve, but or Eleni, but he does have a Venda, and he has
Yep.
Egwene. Um, and they essentially build a big watchtower so they can overlook the city and what's going on down in the around the city. And the battle starts with lightning and all kinds of nastiness that's
Oh yeah.
getting rained down on the people below. And there's an oddity coming from the city, because they have trebuchets and all that stuff, these inventions that these people have built, um that they're using to try and fend off the Aiel from being able to take the city. um this is where you get your first glimpse of Matrim Cathan's, the genius of the character and what he has become. Because he's not, his nature is not to want to be in the middle of the battle. I mean, he doesn't, I kind of liken myself to be like him. I mean, if there's a big war there, I would be looking for, not that I want to completely avoid it, but I'd be looking for the way around it. Not wanting to dive right in the middle of it. But unfortunately for Matt, he finds himself right in the middle of it almost every time. It's like no matter what he does, that's where he's going to end up.
He's got that incredible luck to just show up at the right place, the wrong place, the right time.
Right. Right. Well, and along the way, he meets some interesting characters. So Talmanez actually comes into the story here, and Talmanez is a Cairhenian officer. He's got some. He as an officer, he's also a nobleman, so he has some wealth and power in his own right. But he's more of a quiet sort of guy. He doesn't have that. He's more of a soldier. he doesn't have the arrogance in that sense of being better than everybody around him. You know, a little more practical individual. Um,
Mm.
but Matt's tactics end up saving him and his men, and so he decides to follow Matt. He's like, okay, well, you know, I'm wandering around out here getting my ass kicked, and my people are dying, and here comes this guy, and now we're holding our own. Now we're doing okay against these Aiel, so I think I'm just gonna follow him. Um, and then they meet Nielsen, and Nielsen is a Terran who also has some cavalry with him. Armanda, I think, is one of the other. Basically, they end up attracting some foot soldiers, couple ranks of cavalry, and Matt manages to guide them through this battle where they defeat, you know, a lot of ale.
Yeah.
And they live, they survive it. And that is the beginning of the Band of the Red Hand.
Matt. Yeah. Matt's legend. Because he Matt. Honestly, he definitely was one of those characters that got a max luck stat, man, because it just happens to work out for him. And in this, it's also in this battle where and it happens off screen, which I'm kind of sad it happens off screen. I wish Robert had written it out, but him and Culloden cross
Cross paths.
spears. Yeah, and Matt spears better, and Culloden don't make it out of that fight.
No, Matt ends up killing Culloden. And that
uh,
pretty
Pulling
it,
him down.
it doesn't actually end the battle, but that's pretty much the end right there. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's the end of the beginning for the or the beginning of the end for the Shaido. Um, and here's the thing: the ironic part is you start, like, at least for me, I started to see Matt in a different light because obviously he was always a jokester, the slacker, stuff like that. But he's obviously been growing and changing. But I never saw him explicitly as someone to fear physically. But it's beginning very much so to see him
wow.
like he well, not that he wasn't skilled,
Well, I mean,
but he
he
never.
kicked the crap out of Galad and Gowan, which were
Yeah,
two guys that were training to be warders,
but
and,
they, what
they're
but he,
both heirs to the throne of Andor, so they're princes.
true,
I
true,
mean,
but again, it circles back to that to the legend of the best swordsman in the world. What was his name? I can't remember his name now. But basically, for those of you who don't know, there was a gentleman who was considered the best swordsman in the world. Took on 10 plus enemies at one time and beat them. And he himself was, I believe, a warder. Was one of the first warders at the time, and he only lost one battle, and it was to someone wielding a staff. It was a farmer, beat his ass wielding a staff. Um, and again, you start to see that trope with Matt throughout the stories, as again he said he took on Galad and Gawain, and at the same time and beat him. Um, but it like those instances are few and far between with Matt that I kind of you can be excused for forgetting that he's not Perrin, or he's not Matt, or he's not Lan, because you always see them, like, you see Rand training with Lan to be a sword master. You see the strength that Perrin has when in his battles. Matt, like, you don't there aren't a lot of there are poignant spots where it happens, but they're not as often as the other two. And obviously, Rand's physical capabilities are overshadowed by the fact that he could destroy Matt. Well, could have, probably still can, but he could have, wiped Matt from existence with, a snap of his fingers now,
not with his
because of,
medallion.
yeah, I was gonna say not necessarily anymore. Like, he can't directly target him, but he can target everything around him. So
Right.
that's why I said he could probably still kill him very easily. But physically, I'd put Matt at the top of the food chain in terms of the ability to hold his own in a purely physical fight. Like, I'd wager he'd be able to beat Lan at this point, and that's a tall order.
Hmm.
I think he'd either be able to beat him. It wouldn't be like a one-sided whooping. He'd be able to beat him, or he'd like it would be very close. Um, because with a lot of the things that's in Matt's head now, he's not the same farm boy anymore. I mean, none of them are. So it's interesting to see Matt go up against Couladin, who himself was, not only is he's a wielder of the spear, but who he is. He
Mhm.
was well, kind of a clan chief, but he, like every Aiel, combat has been in his blood and in
Right,
his way of life since he was a kid.
right.
So it's an interesting kind of like oddity there, where you have this farm boy who, yeah, he's been through a lot of things, and you know kind of he's special in a way. Beat this, basically he shouldn't have won if you're really looking at things. Um, but it just goes to show you how much Matt has grown and changed. Maybe for the better. Who knows?
Got to read the story, man. Find
Yeah,
out.
can I read the story?
So yeah, so the big battle goes on. Lydon gets killed by Matt, and so yeah, and I mean they got to mop up the rest of the ale. But eventually, the remnants of the army that was attacking Cairhien end up finding a way across the river. And some of them go back to the main Shaido group,
Yeah,
which is a huge army that nobody wants to. The Aiel army that's with Rand doesn't really want to. They realize that eventually they're going to have to do something about them, but I mean, there's so many of them that they just don't really want to go there.
yeah, it's a
Um,
very protracted battle that no one wants. Like, they might win, but they're gonna lose a lot in the winning.
right, right. So at this point, we're kind of at a stalemate there. They've taken back Cairhien, in which Rand promptly claims Cairhien for Eleni Trekant.
Which
Um,
is
yeah, the daughter heir of
Yep.
Andor, and at this point, so okay, at this point, Rand has kind of torn affections because at this point
He does.
he had started this fledgling relationship with Eleni, um, and also had a one night stand with Vinda.
Which we didn't touch on. We need to touch on that because that happens before this battle.
Right.
So I believe it was back in Riot, and at that point when I can kind of go into that, where um, Rand essentially walks in on Avia the change. She's naked, and she loses her shit. Which I get. You don't want somebody walking rolling in on you, butt naked. I get it. And she somehow
Opens the
channels,
gateway.
yeah, strong enough to open a gateway. Which, again, we learned that this is not an ability that just anybody can, not even Aes Sedai of this age can do. Like, it's a pretty powerful ability, and she just does it off the cuff, probably because she's uh, uh, embarrassed, and a heightened sense of emotion. So she cuts open a gate into essentially what, at least to Rand, looks like a really snowstorm essentially. So he runs after her, grabs a bunch of blankets and furs and stuff, runs after her so she doesn't die in the snow, and manages to catch up with her. They basically Rand creates basically what amounts to an igloo to help keep them warm until they can kind of find their way back.
Well,
Um,
he also uses the power to
yes,
block
that's
open
right.
the doorway that she
Yeah,
made.
yeah. He basically, the way it's described is he ties open the weave to the gate so it doesn't close. Which will come into play in a moment. But yeah, he catches up to her, manages to calm her down, create an igloo, and they essentially have a heart to heart. And Avienda, I believe, reveals her feelings to him. They have a one night stand, and at the end, after the next day, Avienda doesn't necessarily regret it much, but she does regret it in the sense that her and Eleni are friends at this point, and she feels she knows that Elaine has feelings for Rand, and she just slept with him, so she's like, hey, look, we can't do this again. But that does something to Avienda's and Rand's relationship, where it's no longer this Herb's basically hating him, they've come to kind of a mutual understanding, so to speak, and Avienda has finally acknowledged her feelings and has come to kind of terms with that in the sense that okay, I've said my piece on that, cool. So she's still kind of abrasive, but she's not outright mean to him. Like they can kind of they're starting to kind of get along. But after that comes after, but after the one night stand, Avienda says what she has to say regarding Eleni, and they actually are heading back to the gateway to head back into the airways and they run into what they come to find out is the Sea Chan. So that's where she went. She went all the fuck out land from the airways to all the way across the goddamn continent to the Sea Chan lands. That was a big old jump. But
Hmm.
they managed to deal with that because basically a patrol came up on them. So they managed to deal with that. They make their way through. But as they approach the gate and are going through it, Rand realized that the gate doesn't look normal. It
Hmm.
has like this gray kind of like someone like draped something over it. Come to find out, as they're going through the gate, they see Asmodean on the other side of that, playing a harp, just chilling, just playing a harp. Um, So then, but they go through, and Avienda leaves, and Rand confronts Asmodean, like, what the hell are you doing? Why, you know, basically kind of berating him. And Asmodean, being Asmodean, gives him some snark, is like, yeah, okay, yeah. So you wanted me to leave the hanging gate, just chilling in in your bedroom. Cool. Next time I'll do that. um, but that's another dynamic, another interesting relationship that you see with Rand because back back in the last book, Rand and Asmodean were ready, they were trying to kill each other, and thankfully Rand got the better of Asmodean with some help. And I believe it was Lanfear who tied off Asmodean's ability to channel his full
Yep.
power, um, with some pretty fucked up shit. She basically restricted his ability to channel his full power. And the thing with the Forsaken is they're all very powerful when compared to everybody else. Obviously, they have their own hierarchy. There's only like I think two people who can compete with Rand in terms of raw strength, but they all have there's a ladder. And just because you're at the top of that ladder, because I'm pretty sure Asmodean was like within the one power, he was stronger than Lanfear, but
No,
he wasn't.
no.
Okay, I thought he was.
There's
But
only one of the chosen that's stronger than Lanfear. Lanfear was and that's questionable, and that's Demandred. Demandred and Lanfear
okay,
were the two strongest, and they were also friends with Louis Thurn.
I thought Ishmael was up there as well. I'm gonna have to
Mm,
go back and look for that.
the two strongest were Demandred and Lanfear.
Yeah, Lanfear. Gotcha. But I mean, yeah. So there you go. So she kind of pulled the big sister card and said, "Nope, this is what's happening." And Asmodean has no choice but to basically hitch his wagon to Rand because not only is he unable to channel at his full strength, but then Lanfear did him one better and basically said, "Hey, I'm gonna go back and tell the other Forsaken that you've jumped ship."
Well, there's one more piece to that because part of why Asmodean tied himself to Rand is because Rand totally accidentally, but figured out how to cut Asmodean's connection to the Dark One.
Oh yes, yes, that's right, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So Asmodean so does that mean Asmodean isn't subject to the taint?
Well, he wasn't until that connection was cut. That connection with the Dark Man, the fact that he basically sold his soul to the
Yeah,
Dark One,
that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right.
protected him from the taint. But when Rand was able to
Right.
sever that connection,
Opened him
um,
up to the
it opened him up to it. Yep, he's just like
wow.
everybody
Well,
else.
yep. Now he's a normal boy now. But so yeah, so Asmodean has a vested interest in seeing Rand survive, and basically he becomes Rand's teacher, which is ironic because again, for those of you who are, if you're picking up what we've been putting down, everyone, all of the Forsaken and Lewis Theron were at one point friends, if not frenemies, at at a
Mhm.
certain point. Like they all knew each other. Asmodean, I mean, Lanfear and Lewis Theron were a thing for a while,
Hmm.
uh, but they all knew each other. So it's interesting. And here's the thing: at that time, when the Age of Legends was going, Lewis Theron was the strongest one of all of them. Not in the majority of them. They were again Demandred, and there was a couple other people who were on the same level as Lewis Theron, but he was considered amongst all of them first among equals because he was arguably one of
Well,
the
he
strongest.
was the leader of the Aes Sedai,
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah,
male leader of the Aes
the
Sedai.
male leader. Yeah, yeah. So it was again. It's interesting that, and I'm sure if again if you would take yourself and plop yourself in Asmodean's like mind for a moment, it's like this guy used to be, he was Lewis Theron. He's fumbling his ass around doing basic shit. Now I gotta teach him. He's probably like, ah, man, damn it, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. I'm dead. I might as well just pack it in. But anyway, he's basically tied himself to Rand and is Rand's teacher essentially to teach him the things that he needs to know to survive. Um, and this was his way of reinforcing that. And through the books, the next couple books, you actually see a developing. Um, I don't want to say friendship, but there kind of a friendship between Asmodean and Rand. It's not. I mean, it's not built on solid foundation, but I think at a certain point, Asmodean really accepts his fate and really does try to help Rand, and maybe at a certain point builds a grudging respect and appreciation for Rand. Maybe it's reciprocated by Rand, but I've started to see that Asmodean's like, you know what, I'm here, might as well make the best of this particular situation. Um, but yeah, so that's the situation. Rand and Avienda, and again, as Greg said, they had a one night stand, and this was that one night stand.
Right.
But go ahead, Greg.
So yeah, so after they get the city back and Rand claims the city, at this point there's kind of a lull as everybody's the people of Cairhien they do kind of celebrate Rand as the savior, but it's kind of an uncomfortable situation because they don't really want to be conquered for one thing, and all these ale, and they don't know the difference between the what's a good ale and what's a bad ale. They have no idea. So that's another uncomfortable situation that they get themselves into. Now there are Aes Sedai in the city
Mhm.
already. So as they enter the city, Moiraine, the Ale, all of Rand's entourage, they set themselves up in the palace. Becomes a there's a lot of intrigue in this piece of the story, and I actually really enjoyed that part of it all the way up through when they finally get ready to go to Andor. For one thing, they get the school going, and Rand really pushes on getting that school going for people that want to work on ideas, inventions, and moving the world forward. Um, lot of intrigue between the different houses in Cairhien, and obviously positioning between the Terrans, which feel that they feel like they should hold some position over the Cairhenians because Rand is the quote unquote king of Tyr, type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, you at this point you also get your first real glimpse of the bubbles of evil, um,
Mhm.
because that whole thing starts to happen while they're outside Cairhien, and you get the whole bubble of evil thing. Um,
No, I think this is a more pronounced version because we did get to see them in the last book with Perrin, Matt, and Rand.
right.
But I
This
think we saw smaller versions of them.
this one's definitely more pronounced, and has some interesting side effects too. But it also introduces him to Katsuin. Which he doesn't know that right away, but it does introduce him to Katsuin.
True.
So before they leave Cairhien, so up to this point, Lanfair's been playing nice. We've talked about her many guises and how she's trying to get back in the good graces of Lewis Thurn, in this case, Rand al'Thor. But along the way, she finds out that Rand and Avinda had a roll in the
Have
snow, as it
relations.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Roll in the snow. Yeah.
right, and she's very very vengeful. This one, you know what I mean? She just does not like that at all. She's very possessive, and no, that can't happen.
Jealous ex, man.
Yeah.
Crazy old ex.
And this is where she shows her true power, and she's very powerful. That's the thing with her. She is a very powerful Forsaken. So I want to back up just a moment. So in book 3, Pern, not Pern, but Matt, Rand, and Moiraine all go into the Tearing Reel in the Stone of Tyr, and they all basically find out something from the Eilfin. And this is where you get to learn a little bit about what Moiraine found out, okay, and why her behaviors start to change. She's
Yeah.
trying really hard to serve Rand because she knows she needs to stay close to him, and try to guide him as much as she possibly can. She also got one other tidbit of information. So back to they're getting ready to leave. This is where shoot, now I can't remember her name. Damn it. Lanfer. So this is where Lanfer, she finds out that Rand and Avinda had a thing. So she throws a temper tantrum, ends up blowing up a wagon, killing a bunch of people, wraps Egwene and Avinda in flows of air, and basically shuts off their oxygen. And as powerful as Nynaeve and Avinda are, they're trapped. She has them. And then she starts going after Rand as well, and this is where you get this interesting sense that these two are comparable in power, because you would think that Rand, as powerful as he's demonstrated is, should be able to just swat her aside like a fly, and that's not the case. Not the case at all. She is very powerful in her own right.
And I mean, he's fighting from a deficit because he doesn't, it's not like Lewis Theron.
Right, he doesn't know. Right.
Yeah, he doesn't know the things that he can do. I mean, if it was Lewis Theron against her, I'd put my money on Lewis Theron every time.
He does.
But it's not. It's not him. So he realizes. I think this is really the first time where Rand realizes there are levels to the Forsaken, and he's realized, okay, she's not just weirdly like trying to help me or really attracted to me. Now she's a problem.
Yes, she is a problem. So anyway, jealousy overcomes her, and she's decided that, okay, if you're not gonna do what I want you to do, then I'm gonna make this shit happen. That's kind of how I took the whole thing.
Yeah.
And what she fails to pay attention to is Moiraine. And Moiraine's a fairly powerful Aes Sedai. She's not, she's nothing to be scoffed at, but she's definitely not on the level of Rand or any of the Forsaken. So Moiraine actually follows the story that the Aelfin told her, and they never really tell you what the story is. You kind of get a hint of it towards the end of the series. But
Yep.
so Lanfeur's standing on this wagon bed, and in these wagons is all of the Tyrion Grail, Saying Grail, and all these items from the Age of Legends that Moiraine brought back from Rioden. And the one that's right behind Lanfeur is the mirror. There's another one of these mirrors that leads to the land of the Aelfin and the Eilfin.
Oh man.
And
Someone's got to break those fucking mirrors.
well, Moiraine realizing, there's the mirror, there's Lanfeur. If I don't do something, she's gonna kill these girls, and maybe even kill Rand. So Moiraine throws everything she's got at Lanfeur, like physically, and tackles her, shoving her through this mirror, and the two of them disappear through the mirror. And there's so much power, so much of the power involved with what Lanfeur was wielding, what Rand was wielding, all this power, that it literally melts this portal. Just destroys it, just melts it right down. You'd think mirrored, shattered, or something like that, but no, it just melts it right down to the ground. So it's gone. And along with it is Moiraine and Lanfeur.
And to the point where, in that same instance, Lan feels his connection to Moiraine sever. And that only happens when she dies.
Well, that's what they think.
Assumably.
Right.
Assumably. Again, you don't see it happening, like it's assumed, and it may very well be true. But
well,
again,
it wasn't.
Lanfear,
he doesn't. He feels the connection pass. So Moiraine does this believing that she's going to die, and she passes because she's already set this up to pass his bond to Alanna. So
which that in and of itself is fucked up.
Yeah, he didn't even talk to her, or she didn't even talk to him about it. She just set it all up.
He had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he didn't feel her death, but he felt the bond pass. So it's easy to assume that she's dead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way it's written, it's hard to, unless you're really following what Moiraine is doing. It is kind of a,
it's hard to not think she's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Holy shit, she's dead. But that's that's never said that she actually died. It's the assumption that's there. So, and for all technical purposes, I mean, what else would you think? They're dead. They're gone.
Yeah, I think so. I think either one or both of them are dead. I believe I would personally. I'd believe if they made it to the other side, still intact, Lanfear kills Moiraine and then maybe is stuck there or what have you. But and if they don't, then they're both dead.
Yeah, but then you have these Eilfin and Aelfin, which no one really knows what they are. You know what I mean? It's like a totally different dimension. What are these things? And yeah, so that's a story for later. I won't go into that. So yeah, this happens. Now, Rand, there's repercussions to deal with from all of this. This is, ugliness. Lan leaves because he's got, goes after following the person with his bond, and when he does so, he gives his ring, his signet ring, to
Nynaeve?
Yes, Nynaeve. My
Yep.
mind is blanking out on.
And keep in mind, Lan is not. He's not just a warder. He's a king. He's the last king of a kingdom that's not really there anymore. Yeah, like it exists. It's on the map, but there's no one living in it anymore. It was a border. It was one of the border cities that held back the blight.
Yeah, you can see the map right behind us in the stream. It would have been in the top left hand corner.
Yep.
Depends on what way you're facing.
Yeah.
Um,
The new
yeah,
orientation, but yeah.
it
Yep.
would be right up there, all the way up to the top.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so we got that. Now they put together an army, and not a big army, but a force of Aiel, and some some Terrans and Cairhien, and they jump to Andor. That takes a little while, but when they jump to Andor, um, something really interesting happens at this. You want to talk about it?
Hmm. What happens in Andor? Well, let me go back to my notes.
So at this point, everybody believes that Margus Traken is dead.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, as you say that, I just my eyes just landed on it. Yeah. So yeah, Morgase Strachan, who is the queen of Andor and Elaine's mother, everyone believes she did. Um,
She's dead.
and
She's
ironically
dead.
enough, they believe that she's dead at the hands of the Forsaken Raven, who, unbeknownst to her at the time, was her lover, Gabriel.
Yeah. Now, no one
Um,
knows that he's the Forsaken. He's
yeah,
just
exactly. No,
it's
no one
Gabriel.
knows. They just yeah, they just think of him as Gabriel. Um, and Rand again, he's like, hold on, wait a minute, I let that slide. So again, he proceeds to Camelin, and basically he's gonna go there and you know, I don't know. At this point, does Rand know it's no, he just thinks it's Gabriel, so he's going there to pretty much exact revenge,
Yeah.
um, for you know, Elaine. Basically, and he attacks. Rand does attack. Him and his strike force attack Camelin, and unfortunately, during this particular battle, Raven kills Matt, Asmodean, and Avienda. Um, but basically, and then it escapes into Telenran Riyadh, and Rand, consumed with rage, destroys him with balefire,
Wow, you
which is
really shortened that
very
whole story up.
well. You can expand on it,
No,
but
it's
I was
okay.
just giving the cliff notes. But yeah, but Rand like he loses his shit. He just lost his friend, lost someone who was perhaps becoming a friend, and then lost someone that he had a budding relationship with, but who was also a friend, and uses this ability that even in the time of legends was rarely used because of its significance. So balefire was an ability that essentially unmade whatever was destroyed from existence, to the point
It
that
is the fire of heaven.
yeah, like it basically it unmakes whatever it was, to the point where in this case Matt, Asmodean, and Avienda come back as though they were never killed. And then the deeper significance to that is that it burns away the pattern on the wheel, which inevitably weakens it. So again, balefire is something that even the Aes Sedai of this age know not to use. And there are very few individuals, I think, in this age that can use it, but all know of it and know that you don't use it sparing, like you don't use it, just
Muller
just cause.
Moraine was actually powerful enough to use it.
Yeah, Moraine was one of them. I think Nynaeve and Egwene are also powerful. I don't know if they know how to, but I think they have the power to use it. And Elaine maybe. Um, but yeah, Balefire is one of those things that. And here's the thing: it's also like another. Rand also uses it at another instance where Matt. I think it was before this. It was when they were at or they were still in the Ale Waste, where Chalaks and Dark Friends attack with the Dark Hounds, and
Mhm.
now they have like they have poisonous saliva, but it's so poisonous that it would kill you like outright. But in that instance, Rand also uses balefire to destroy the Hound, which had drooled on Matt, who and again cured him right out because essentially you didn't have you, the
It never happened.
basically the thing did yeah it never happened. Thing never existed. Um, but yeah, so it's one of those abilities that you gotta be real careful.
Yeah, the,
Ironically enough, though, Rand, at least from my memory, Rand starts using that shit like it's going out of style.
well, I think that was set up for the story. That's why it's fires of heaven. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, the piece where Rand saves Matt's life is kind of set up for what happens next
yeah,
in the
yeah.
story now.
Because from what I
Um,
remember, Moraine chews him out for that and explains like, "Hey, this is why you can't use that shit."
right, you're literally burning people out of the pattern.
Yeah,
They just cease to exist, and everything they did is
is
undone.
gone. Yeah,
Right.
like to the point where I think I remember like from that passage where she sounds like you won't even remember them. Like the memory of them will be gone, over time. Like so that I mean that's wild. Like you're literally just deleting them as though they were never ever around. That's shit.
Talk about a
I wonder what
do-over.
happens if you yeah, I wonder what happens if you hit the fucking dark one with some balefire. Hmm. I mean, it probably wouldn't really do much to him. He's the dark one. It'll hurt probably, but I don't think it would unmake him. He's one of those at least in my mind, like the way that they describe the Dark One and his connection, to the story, it's like he's this primordial evil. Like he kind of stands outside of time and space as we understand it.
Mhm.
He's the void before the Big Bang kind of deal.
Yeah, what
So
came first? Who really knows, right?
yeah, exactly. It's like it's like we're both old enough. We don't know who came first. It's me or God or me or the divine being or whatever. Who knows? Um, but yeah, it's interesting, and it's also very interesting that like this in in i- in all of the interactions with like folks like the Forsaken and the Aes Sedai and all that. I've never truly there's never been a true instance of genuine. I mean, not necessarily not a fear of death, but like Moraine, at least when you read this passage, the passages of her, chewing out Rand, like there was like this genuine fear because of Balefire, and even with Raven, like when Rand used it against him, like it was like not only am I like he understood what was going. He's like, no, I'm not dead, but I don't exist anymore. Like I'm gone, and like that's the thing that can never be undone. So
Well,
that
not never. Not
well, it would take a significant amount of strength to undo something like that. Because
well,
again, they burn
I
that.
don't know if any mortal can do it, but there is one being, force, power that can bring people back from the.
Well, I mean the dark one, yeah. I mean, well, assumably two, because if the dark one do it, you can assume the creator can do it. He just chooses not to for whatever reason.
Well, actually, yeah, yeah, philosophical about a fictional story, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. You can assume one can do it, the other one could probably do it, but in this case, yeah, the only person that has been shown to do it is the dark one. Infinity Core says, if I remember correctly, there was an incident during the Great War where the weave was almost broken because of balefire. Oh yeah, exactly, exactly. That's essentially what Moraine tells him. It's like this weakens the weave and could destroy everything if we use it too much. Um, which is ironic because now that I'm thinking about it, it didn't wasn't when they attacked Camelin and the Shaido. Didn't Rand use balefire in that tower too? I think no, either he used something.
I
I don't think it was
that's
balefire.
the
I don't think
use
it
of
was balefire.
balefire doesn't stop in book 5. We'll put it that way.
No. Yeah, like he uses it often.
For a
Well,
while,
too.
yeah.
I was gonna say often in that that's kind of his fallback when all else
Right.
fails.
Right. It's like the
Because he
go-to
he
tool,
knows.
you know.
Yeah, well, he knows when, especially when he's fighting Forsaken, like that's the trump card. There's no really no protection against it. There's no shield you could throw up. There's no counter magic or whatever. Like you get hit with Balefire, whatever gets hit with Balefire, it's gone. So it I understand why he fell back to it. He probably did a little too much though.
So,
It's deleting people out of existence. Jesus.
okay. Well, to round out this piece of the story, so yes, Rand chases Riven into Tel'aran'rhiod, so into the
Yes.
world of
That's yeah.
dreams.
Uh-huh.
And that's where he uses Balefire to destroy. And that's actually a really good fight because it's interesting. They kind of chase each other around the palace in Camlin and destroy, half the palace in the world of dreams.
Yep.
So the outside world, everything's just fine, but in the world of dreams, they're tearing this sucker down.
I
Um,
wonder I wonder if that stays. I wonder if like if some dreamwalker, comes through like, after the fact and just sees a destroyed ass, busted up Palace of Camlin where, you know, it used to be.
I'm going to say it doesn't stay that way, but
Yeah.
that's
Who
never
knows?
right. It's never
Yeah.
really
It's
addressed.
never
So
touched on.
I mean, obviously, people are still in the world of dreams and still, in Camlin and probably in the palace later on. And you don't really hear anything about it being this, crumpled mess of rubble. I mean, it's, but it is when Rand and Riven are done because they tear that fucker down. Um, but Rand, one final burst throws everything he's got at Riven, who so far has been really good at avoiding Rand and almost kills Rand. Um, but one final burst, he outsmarts him and hits him with this massive beam of balefire. So massive that the previous death of Matt and Avinda and Demundred is erased.
Yep.
So they're back
Yep.
back alive again.
Which I can't exactly remember like what like how that dialogue went when they when they finally came back and essentially kind of woke up from being dead. Um, did in Divinity Court asked, did the world of dreams impact the real world in some fashion? That is why it was typically bad to demolish things as well. Um, that is a good question. I think Greg is looking up the answer to that.
No, well, it
You know,
does it really doesn't.
yeah, I don't think it affects the physical. Like again, if we're in the world of dreams and I'm
Right.
breaking down, the
Well,
the palace at Camelin, it's not
right.
the palace in the real world going to start falling apart. But there is like if I believe if you're like if again if you're a dream walker, in that respect, it does affect the real world. Meaning, if you die in there, like your consciousness or your spirit or whatever you want to call it is injured or dies in the dream world, I do think it affects
Die.
you physically.
Well, it's
Yeah.
because okay, Tel'aran'rhiod is a reflection of our
Mhm.
world. So the idea, and it doesn't really expand upon this a lot in the story, but Jordan does kind of talk about this idea, this concept that there are many worlds. Um, even going so far as to hint to the idea that the real our world may be one of those worlds. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so Tel'aran'rhiod is a reflection of the the real world for Rand and crew. So the things that happen unless you go there, okay, because you're in the real world, you're a product of the real world. If you go there and you die there, then you die in the real world. Um, but if you go and destroy something in Tel'aran'rhiod, Yeah, it's not destroyed in the real world. Um, Good idea, man. Hey, I just like about a month and a half ago, I just finished rereading all the books again.
Yep. Yeah. Myself and Greg are both rereading them. And
Yeah,
yeah, like you definitely learn a lot when you're doing a
things
second, a third read through.
things that happen to you in Teleranrod will come back with you.
Yeah.
Um, things are only reflected in Teleranrod. So if like a building is going to be in the same place, but like a door is not always closed, or if it is always closed, then it'll be closed and probably stay closed in Teleranrod. But if like your front door to your house, then potentially every time you look at it, it may be open or closed. Just like a window may be open or closed. Um, it's not never, because it's not stable in the real world. It's not going to be stable there either. But as far as is that reflection impacting the real world, no, there's no real hint of that in the books. Um, I think logically, depending on where you want to put your imagination or what you want to believe in this case, I mean, I could see it working that way, where there would be maybe some impact. But if you're looking at it as it's described in the books as a reflection of the real world, then yeah, it's what happens in the reflection of the real world in this sense doesn't necessarily happen in the real world. And Teleranrod's always behind the real world. So like if you camp somewhere for a night, it doesn't mean that your camp is going to be visible in Teleranrod. It's if you camp some in a space for several nights in a row or maybe a month, then it'll probably show up in Teleranrod. The world of dreams.
World of Dreams is an interesting place.
It
Um,
is.
it's especially when you add to the fact that you said, Greg, um, Jordan hints that not first of all, not everything is as it seems in the world of dreams, and our world might be a world of dreams for somebody else. It's one of those worlds.
Right?
Obviously, never explicitly stated, but it's hinted at. So it's like, hold on, wait a minute. It's like it makes you question, like, okay, well, which one's the real one then?
So the next piece of this is the flight of Eleni Track and Nynaeve.
Yeah, yeah, that's an
Um,
interesting.
right. Well, and this is them, traveling through the land, looking for Saladar, and they, what an interesting story that is, because they're traveling in hostile territory. They're behind enemy lines.
Yeah, they're in the I want to say the Sechin lands, right? At this point.
Well, not there's lands filled with the Siachin basically left over from Tolman Head. So
Yeah.
from book two,
Yeah.
the Siachin haven't really gotten a firm hold
From
yet,
the hold.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so at this point, and they're in Tenchico, but who really knows what the hell's going on there. Um,
Yeah.
so these guys are traveling through the land looking for the rebel Aes Sedai, because at this point, Swan Sensei has been disposed, and for all intents and purposes, she's dead as well. They stilled her and killed her, essentially, is the thinking there. Um, so you have her story, you have Suan and Lian's story that's going on in here as well, and this is where you actually get to meet Gareth Brine, okay, and then you have Nynaeve and Eleni who are traveling through this land now. Nynaeve and Eleni end up in this is where they end up in Tenchico, and they end up capturing Mughaiden.
Yep.
And she ends up traveling with them essentially and finding, because they okay, so when they escape from the Siachin, they actually they have one of the atoms,
Hmm.
and they
And
end up,
that's essentially how they do that.
right, they end up putting the atom on her, and I think it's Eleni figures out how to basically, what she figures out is the bracelet and the collar will work without the chain. So you don't need to be, they don't need to be connected. You can put the collar on somebody and the bracelet on yourself as long as you can channel, and then you can control that person. And that's how they get control over Makai. Um and they're, out looking for the world at this point. Plus they're in the, okay, so the they're in the traveling circus. I can't remember what the damn, what's his name? Anyway,
It's not
they're,
Palantain. No, it's
no,
not
no, no,
Palantain.
but they're with the traveling show. That's actually okay. So um Eleni and Nynaeve are meeting with, the with Egwene essentially
Valen
in
Luca is the guy's
Valen
name.
Luca. They're meeting with Nynaeve and Teleranrod. What and obviously what they don't realize. And at this point, um, there's a really important character that has made themselves known to Eleni. Do you remember who that is?
It's not Galad. No, I can't remember.
Blonde hair and a bow.
Oh, yeah. She's
Bridget.
it's Pergita, right? Or
Yeah,
Bridget.
yeah, yeah. So, and she is a hero from legend, but
Hmm.
what you find out now is this is where the legendary heroes wait until they're recalled, is in Teleranrod. So anyway, what ends up happening is Nynaeve ends up getting captured by Mughaiden,
Hmm.
and Mughaiden is really nasty to her, but Bridget steps in to help Nynaeve, and Nynaeve it does something and ends up pulling Bridget and Mughaiden out of the out of Tel'Renrod.
Yeah.
I think that's how that worked. Anyway, she did pull Bridget out of Tel'Renrod. So at this point,
Well,
this
so a hero
woman,
of legend is back in the world. Back in
right,
the world.
and not born into it like normal.
Uh, yep.
Um, so the only thing that Eleni can think of to try and save her life is to bond her. So Eleni bonds Bridget, the hero of legend, as her first warder.
Yep.
So two,
Saves her life, but yeah.
yeah, it does saves her life, but it's this
Big
amazing
deal.
thing, right, right.
Yeah.
Um, and then as a consolation prize, they end up capturing Mughaiden,
Mhm.
and she puts on a persona. Basically, they find Saladar, which is where the rebel Aes Sedai are held up. Rebel Aes Sedai really is the Blue Ajah, and then some of the Aes Sedai that agreed with the Blue Ajah and left the White Tower. What they don't realize is that it's, there's enemy amongst them. We'll leave it that way.
Yeah, there definitely is an enemy amongst them. There's the Forsaken and everybody got everybody. They got people all over the place, man. They're like cockroaches. They're just
Yes.
everywhere. Um, but it's also at this point where I believe Nynaeve ends up back in the, or am I skipping too far ahead? Because I know she ends up back in the world of dreams at some point after the Bridget and them get pulled out and they capture Megiddian.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to remember why and how she ends up back in the world of dreams. And I can't remember. But the reason why that's of significance is because Nynaeve actually, when she ends up back in the world of dreams, she comes back in at the point where Rand and Ravian are fighting. Like she kind of
Yes.
walks in on that fight, and then proceeds to aid Rand in fighting against Ravian, because again, Ravian is not only, again, he's a full Forsaken and capable, in control of all of his powers and all of his memories,
Mm-hmm.
fighting, Rand, who's
A
a fledgling
wilder.
by comparison. Yeah, yeah, he's a fledgling by
See,
comparison.
if you're a D&D
He's not
player,
Luther.
think chaos magic. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really what Rand is doing.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. It's wild magic.
it's
He's
like I'm
just
gonna
fucking
do
punch
something, and
out.
then something happens. He doesn't really
Yeah, he's
know
like,
what.
I'm gonna do this and hope it works because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Um, Although Rand gets a lot better over throughout the course of the books. Like he comes into his own. He learns, um, both because of Asmodean and other reasons, which I think we get more into the next book, because I don't think those start yet. And Greg, I think you know what I'm talking about. I don't
Oh
think they
yes.
start yet. Do they?
Nope, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Infinity Core hit the nail on the head. Rand equals I'm just going to try something and hope it works. Because
Yeah, pretty much.
that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm a spitball, and we'll see what happens, guys. Hope for the best.
Yeah. So yeah, they end out in Saladar, and so where this kind of we've just really skipped over a lot of stuff, but that's okay. I mean, you need to read the book. We don't want to spoil the whole thing for you.
Yeah, the broad strokes.
Right now, this piece. So they're in Salador now. So is Suan Sanche. Gareth Brine chases down Suan Sanche. And I'm getting ahead of myself and going into the next book already. So I'm going to stop right there. Yes, sir. So one part that does end in this book is if you remember Uno and the Shenarans. So Eleni and Nynaeve meet the prophet. You remember who he is, right?
Yeah, he's the guy advocating on Rand's behalf, basically,
Right.
like calling people
Yeah,
to join the
supposedly.
Dragon Reborn. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, supposedly.
And they also meet the Queen of Gildan. They don't realize it, but they meet the Queen of Gildan. It's the first time that character is introduced, very, very briefly. And they meet Massima. That's the prophet's name. Massima is one of Agelmar's men, the Shenarans that escorted, that basically went after the horn, went after Peyton Fane and tracking down the horn.
Yeah.
So Uno, of course, realizes who these girls are right away. They also run into Galadriel, who at this point Suan Sanche has been disposed. The girls were all sent off to hunt the Blackjaw, and Galadriel joined. Well, I don't want to say it that way. What did Galadriel do? Where is he at in the story right now? I'll leave that one for you.
I'm gonna have to look back to my notes, see what he did.
You forgot? Well, they run into a group of unsavory people because they have the main things that they run into are some bandits. This traveling show is their source of protection,
Yeah.
and then they also run into the prophet and his hooligans, and the thing that's keeping the prophet and his hooligans somewhat in check is the Children of the Light.
Oh yeah, yes, Galad. Yeah, basically the Galad Damodred who, I'm starting to see that a lot of people are fucking related because you have Moraine Damodred, who is his
Aunt,
sister,
aunt,
aunt,
right?
but that's also kind of like the aunt by
The
marriage to
the
Elaine
no.
because
Okay. So Moiraine is the sister to the king, who is the father of Eleni and Demandred and Gawain.
so yeah,
Um,
so Elaine is her niece.
Moraine's sister was the queen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Before
sister-in-law was the queen.
uh,
She ran off to the
to
waste.
to the waist. There we go. That's right. Yeah. So then Elaine or Moraine is also related to Rand.
Yes,
Yo, there's a lot of familiar bonds in this damn
not
book.
by blood though.
Not by blood, yeah, by marriage. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Damn, there's a lot of
Morgus.
familiar bonds.
So Eleni's mom, Morgus, is the sister of um, Galad's mother. Galad's mother was the queen of Cairhien, which is Moiraine's sister. Okay, when that sister disappeared into the waste,
Morgus took
then
moved
right,
out.
the Demandred name Morgus Trakand married
Yeah,
the Demandred. So Galad's last name stayed Demandred because it's not actually Morgus's child; it's his stepchild. But
yeah,
since Morgus is the king or queen, I'm sorry, queen of Andor, her and her children kept the Trakand name, not the Demandred name.
a lot of bonds, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because then that means even if by marriage, Elaine and Rand are loosely related, and Rand
Loosely, yeah. Well, yeah, they are.
Rand and then Galad are related.
Hey, what good story about noble, powerful elitists what story would be good if there wasn't a little incest in there? I mean, come on.
Still makes it weird. Still makes it very fucking weird. Okay. Still makes it weird because it's like, wait a minute. But
It is. It is weird.
it's like, oh, wait a minute here. But yeah. So the Children of the Light are kind of what keep the Prophet in check. Here, are they hunting for him? I think they are at this point.
The Children of the Light.
Yeah.
I think that I
Like,
think they're kind of
get this
lost.
yeah.
I really do.
In
I
some
think they're kind of
in some
lost.
cases, more than kissing, man.
Right? Because I mean, at this point, the old wolf is dead.
Yep.
Um, Adrian
Yeah.
Nile. And I think that I think the Children of the Life of the Light are just kind of adrift at this point.
Mhm.
Most of
Because I think
the
at this point they named Galad the new like Lord Commander of
no,
the
no,
White Cliffs. Yeah.
he's just an officer. He's just an officer
Yeah.
in the Children of the Light.
Yeah.
He's more of a tool because they know who he is. They know that he's
Yeah.
the
They know he's.
stepson of Morgus.
Uh
And
huh.
lo and behold, we might as well just add this piece in there. Okay, Morgus is not dead.
No.
Morgus
She's still alive.
is now captive to the Children of the Light. So that's why they grabbed on to Galad, because that gave them a tie to Morgus, is
Yeah.
something to hold over her
And I don't
head.
even think he knows. I don't think he knows that his stepmom is
Doesn't
being held captive at this point.
he doesn't know she's still alive?
Poor guy. Not only is she still alive, but your own people are holding her.
Well, at this point, no one knows that Morgus is still alive.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Everyone thinks she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing. People start thinking you're dead. Well, they leave you alone for a little bit.
Talonvor, which is an officer in the royal palace in Andor, who you get introduced to way back. I think it's I think it's in like late in book one or maybe book two. I think it's late in book one. You get introduced to Talonvor when Rand first meets Eleni and Gowan in the garden. When he falls over the wall and meets them in the garden, the officer
Yeah.
that comes on scene is Talonvor, and Talonvor is loyal to the queen. So when everything goes down and the queen actually finally kind of starts to break out of the whole power that Riven has over her, Talonvor and the gentleman that owns the inn, the queen's blessing, and Lamgwin, the head knocker, the basically bouncer for the queen's blessing. They all band together and they spirit Margus out of the city and help her escape. And the only thing Margus can come up with is, she needs an army to be able to retake her kingdom. They don't have that. So what they end up with is they go to the White Cloaks to try to get Padron Nile to help her reestablish herself. That's how that all played to where we're at right now. Wasn't a bad. I don't know if that was a good decision or a bad decision. It turned out to be a bad decision because things were just not quite the way she thought they were in the world.
Yeah. Well, they very, very, very rarely ever are. So.
One thing that Eleni and Nynaeve also get introduced to. What is that? What is that root? The one that numbs their ability to channel. At this point, Elida's the Amyrlin. And Elida has sent out basically a decree to that these girls are to be captured and returned to the White Tower and yada yada yada.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that route. But basically that the Elida has been installed as a new Armelin seat, and is basically decreeing the rebels as traitors, yada yada. I want to say something happens to her as well in this book. I'm trying to remember because I know there's been so many. The Armelin seat has changed hands so many times, but I know at some point one of them is was it called stilled?
Yeah, Suan
Cut off from the
Sanchez.
one part. Yeah, okay, yeah, so she was the one that was stilled.
Yeah, there's only 3 Amyrlins in the whole story.
Okay, because they get fucking changing hands like nobody's business. Okay, so it was Suan. Okay, I can't remember if it was her or Lida. Oh.
Yep, Suan right now has no power. She's not able to touch the source. She's been stilled. So her purpose has been that's kept her and Leanne. And Leanne's Damani. So she does her thing. They end up finding. Okay, so their escape from the White Tower. Gowan actually helps them escape from the White Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Gowan Traken. Along with some other folks, but they escape from the White Tower, and on their way, in the process of escaping, they take Logan with them. Okay, who was one of the false dragons. Mm-hmm. All right, so then they're traveling across the land, trying to figure out where the rebel Aes Sedai are or whatever. They end up staying overnight in a barn And they accidentally burn the barn down, and the militia or whatever, the farmers, take them to the local lord, and the local lord of the land is Gareth Brine, one of the great captains, who Margus basically retired him, So
Mm-hmm.
and so Suan and Leanne meet and Logan meet Gareth Brine. He has no idea who these people,
These people are,
Well,
yeah.
right, and the stilling causes them to look way younger. So something familiar about her, but it can't be that
Can't
Amerlin
place it.
seat.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so uh, knowing that she wasn't going to uphold it, just to get away, but she wasn't going to uphold it immediately. Just to get away, get out of this situation. Suan gives this oath. I think he did. He did recognize Logan, and we'll get there in just a moment. So yeah, so she makes this oath, basically swearing her soul by the light, yada yada yada. So Gareth Brine decides to be somewhat lenient on her. So her and Leanne escape again and save Logan, because Logan's recognized, and at this point, I mean, he's been stilled. He's you know he was a false dragon. He was had kings following him and whatnot. So this guy is completely devastated. Um, so Leanne kind of uses her feminine wiles to try to get this, try to get a little bit of life back into this guy. Um, and they run instead of honoring their pledge to Gareth Brine. They run, and at this moment's where Gareth Brine gets tied into the story, because he makes a decision to follow them, to chase after them. He puts a small group of his men, old guardsmen, together and goes chasing after Leanne and Suan, and they all end up in Saladar. And of course, the Aes Sedai and Saladar realize who he is, and who Suan and Leanne are, which they don't know what to do with them because they've been stilled. They're former Amelin Sea, and they realize who Logain is. They put him under guard, and they recruit Gareth Brine to start raising an army to retake the White Tower. And that's kind of where I want to stop.
Yeah. Retaking in the White Tower. That's got to be a tall order, boy. Especially because the Black
Right.
Ajah is basically taken over.
At this point, Eleni and Nynaeve are in Saladar with the rebel Aes Sedai. Leland and Suan Sanchez are also with the rebels Aes Sedai. Gareth Brine's with and Logan's with the rebel Aes Sedai. Matrim Cathan has been charged by Rand to go and find Eleni and escort her back to Andor so that she can be on the throne. So that's what him and the band have gone off to do. What else do we got? Okay, so Lan is headed for the Borderlands because that's where his bond is taking him.
Yeah.
Um,
It's ironic that he's heading back to the Borderlands, considering who he is, but makes sense.
And okay, Moraine's gone, and Rand is attempting to consolidate his power and figure himself out, because at this point, I think he's kind of a shit at this point.
Yeah, he's being pulled in a bunch of different directions. Everybody's out to kill him or use him. He still has to learn what he needs to learn about the One Power,
right,
and he's still going crazy.
and there's another factor that comes into play here, because there's a Borderlander army that is camped outside of Andor with a second of the great captains, a man by the name of Davram Basher. And if you remember Fail's last name, which is now Pern's wife,
Yep,
is
Abera.
Fesher.
That's his dad.
It is her
Yep,
dad, Daddy.
it's her daddy.
And of course,
Yeah, it's her daddy.
they travel, so the men never leave their wives at home for their people. So
Mm,
mom and dad are both there.
yep. Mom is just as formidable as her husband.
Not more so, man. I don't know if I would want to mess with that
Yeah,
woman.
I was gonna say. Yeah, I was gonna say probably more so in the case. See, that's usually how it goes.
Yes, ma'am. Whatever
That's
you
right.
say.
Yeah, you want me to go do them dishes? You got it.
I don't want to do dishes. Just means I have to avoid the fuck out of you.
Yeah, yeah. It's gotta just make myself busy elsewhere. Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, I honestly, I mean, we talked about this off screen. You have individuals who think that the Wheel of Time is as a story is too long. I honestly, to those people, I say, well, I guess you don't like world building. That's what all of this is to me, and it's good world building. It's giving life to a very intricate and detailed world in a way that it doesn't make it feel, at least in my opinion, again, my personal opinion, doesn't make it feel overblown or rushed or what have you. It gives solidity to the world that Robert Jordan built outside
Yeah.
of like the major broad strokes and plot points. You know what I mean? Um, and I like that him as an author, that he had the wherewithal and kind of the pre-planning to do all that, to kind of tie back to those people we heard about or we read about 2 or 3 books ago. Now they're getting, their story is being told, even if it's just for a little bit.
Right.
um you know
Well, he built a complete in many ways. I mean, there's so much
there's
opportunity
been
with this story.
for more, but
Um,
for the most part he built a complete world and answered all most of the questions throughout the storytelling process. I'm sure if you dig deep enough, you'll find some loopholes and some unanswered things. But for the most part, I want to say 80% of that story was told and tied up at
I
the end.
it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the real
No,
question.
absolutely not. Doesn't
As
matter.
long as the story you're telling makes sense, that's the main thing. Is
Exactly.
that it can't have these like complete gap spots in it where it's just like, okay, how do we go from there to here? There's nothing in
And
between
that's the
there.
thing.
I don't
It
understand.
doesn't, like,
Right.
yeah. His doesn't, Tolkien's doesn't. There's very few authors um out there then and now that really tie up those story pieces that well. Um, Tolkien was one, C.S. Lewis was one, Jordan was one, Robert E. Howard. A lot of the greats. Sanderson, who is of our my generation, uh, is one of them as well. Like if you look at the Cosmere series, he's created very intricate worlds, but he answers. He doesn't leave a lot floating out there.
Right.
Like he doesn't leave a lot of loopholes and things like that in his storytelling, which I appreciate because I've read a number of storytelling. Sorry, a number of stories, and sometimes you're like, that never got answered, or where the fuck did that come from? There's
Right.
no explanation for it. So I mean, that's just my 2 cents there on that. I like when
That's what we're
things
here
get
for,
answered
man.
properly. Yeah,
All right. Well, I certainly hope that everybody has enjoyed our chat tonight about Wheel of Time Book 5, Fires of Heaven.
yeah.
Again, if you haven't read this series, go try it. And there is the series on Amazon by the same name. Um, and that is a good story. Don't get me wrong. I would not knock that story. It is not the Wheel of Time, but it does bear the same name and a loose resemblance. So, in its own right, if you've never read the books before, that's probably an absolutely awesome story because standalone, it's pretty good. But when you have this juxtapose the two next to each other. It's like, okay, I know the story because I've read it, and now I'm watching this show, and it's like,
Like, hold
okay.
on, this is
That
not.
didn't happen, or that didn't happen that
Not
way,
adding up.
or yeah. So
Yeah. It's another Wheel of Time, maybe from the past or from the future of the books. It's an alternate timeline. That's what it is.
right, right.
So I can't give him too much shit because it could be an alternate timeline, and Jordan has hinted at
It's
and
one of
wrote.
those multiple worlds that are out there that are hinted at in the books. It's a
Yeah,
slightly
yeah.
different variation of the story. I hate
Yeah.
it. No,
I
can't
I
do that.
I I
No,
I
I do. I like the
don't
story. I do
necessarily
like the
hate
story
that.
on Amazon as well. It's not the
Yeah.
Wheel of Time.
Here's
But
here's the thing. I've never seen it, so I'm not gonna say if I hate it or not. But don't use that whole, like what we were talking about with Tolkien, not Tolkien, Jordan's kind of hinted at that, there's a possibility for multiple worlds as a reason to write a shoddy adaptation and then call
right,
it the Wheel of Time. That's my thing. That's my thing there for that. It's like just call it a different story. That's it.
right.
Or stay as faithful
If
as you
you're
can
gonna
to the
make your own story, then just go make your own damn story. I mean,
and yeah, and that's honestly that's what we need a lot. We need more of that now. We need more people creating new stories, not trying to retell or reimagine stories that already exist. It's like, come on, guys, go
right.
go go flex your creative muscle and create some of your own. If
Try
it
to.
sucks, then oh well, try again.
There you go. So I think that is it for tonight. We're gonna raid into a gentleman who does some old school D&D, Lord Gisumba. So I've
Yep.
actually worked with him quite a bit. He and I were both at GaryCon this last year, and I'm sure we'll be there. I'm sure he'll be there, and I know I will be there in 2025. So
Yes,
look
sir.
into joining us for that. But yeah, we're gonna hop over there, check out what he's doing. Please show him some love, and thank you very much for being with us tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next Wednesday. All right. And
Yep.
I went
Adios.
through all that and waited till the very end to start the raid. So I'm really good at this raiding thing. I'm telling you.
Greg, yeah, Greg, that's your thing, Greg. I'm convinced you're doing it on purpose now.
Maybe I. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys.